Hi, my name is Chelsea Wiley, and I'm here because I want to teach you about a book I just wrote called Mystical Motherhood, which helps women create happy families and also conscious families. I want to tell you a little bit about my background and how I came to write this book. This will be a long blog series, and I am just going to film it from my kitchen for now because I realized that this has to get out to more people. I've been teaching this book and this process to women privately with extraordinary results. And I now see that more people can benefit from this. And despite not wanting to film sometimes and being nervous, I have to put it out there. And I'm going to do it in this form for now and then probably have a better filming later. So Mystical Motherhood is a journey that takes women step by step through the process of bringing a conscious child onto this planet from preconception to the early childhood years. And it helps with guiding through fertility. It helps the process of planning for a safe birth and a loving postpartum period. Also a magnificent and holy and beautiful and bonded experience as the child grows up. And I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to write this book and my background so that you understand where it comes from and why I have any knowledge or ability to even teach you this. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology and art history, and I knew that I needed to do more in this world immediately coming out of school. So I went directly into getting my master's in nursing, and I worked my butt off while working full-time to do this, and it was quite difficult, but it was worth it. I was immediately and quickly taken up and guided to work in labor and delivery, which at the time was a very difficult job to get, but I knew that I was placed there on purpose. I worked in a medical center in a very busy region of Los Angeles and had the opportunity to see around 4 to 6 births a day and participate in each of these, which is quite a few. The hospital birthed hundreds and hundreds of babies a month. It's more like a birthing factory. And at this medical center, I saw the Western, probably the more negative Western side of birth. The medical center liked to get patients in and out quickly to reach numbers. A lot of interventions were used. Women did not have a voice. They lost their power. And I saw a lot of tragedies. I saw a lot of women leave that weren't prepared to leave the medical center and take care of their child. I saw a lot of C-sections that didn't need to occur even when we fought against them as the nurses. And a lot of this broke my heart, and I just knew there was something different in the world. I knew that all birth couldn't be like this, but I got the experience. I went on to work at a different medical center, a higher medical center in a different region of the country, one of the best in the nation. They say the best in the world. So it was an amazing opportunity. And it was still Western medicine, but it was higher because the doctors would listen to the patients and they would discuss things, and they'd use what they call, scientific background. They still use Western medicine, but it was from a more loving perspective. So I worked longer there, and I enjoyed my job a lot. I liked everyone I was working with, and I enjoyed the sight of birth, of the ecstatic sight of birth, of experiencing a new child coming into this world every single day, which was the most life-changing, probably the most life-changing thing you can go through. During this time, I knew that I wanted to study even more about how to bring a child into this world. So I had the opportunity to go to the farm in Tennessee to study with Ina May Gaskin and other midwives who are probably the most, Ina May Gaskin for sure is the most famous midwife in the world. She's written 2 books, Spiritual Midwifery and Birth Matters. Oh, and one more. I can't remember at the top of my head. I highly recommend reading these books if you want to see all sides of birth and how you can approach it from different perspectives. And at the farm, I learned that birth is spiritual and it's a mystery. And there's an lost art that we've lost in this world of how to bring a baby into this world in a more natural and gentle way. I learned about breech births. I learned about herbalism. I learned about natural birthing. I learned about fear in birth. I learned about men in the room and the amount of fear that causes women. And I learned about the ancient art of midwifery. And it just triggered something in me that was huge. So at this point, I've had a lot of experience in the Western world of birthing, and I've also had the opportunity to experience this other side of birth, which is the natural way, and less interventions and less tragedy, and just a more sacred, holy way it felt like at that moment in time to bring a child onto this planet. I was changed dramatically by this experience, and I knew that it would change the trajectory of my life, and it did. So in that time of being at the farm, I knew I was supposed to have a child, and I decided to birth that child naturally at home. And everyone at work was like, you're going to have a C-section. We'll see you in here soon, because there's so much fear around birth. But I needed to experience this. I know I needed to. I went on to have a natural home birth. It was quite painful, the first one, but it was worth it. And I learned a lot personally. It was a big transformative experience for me, which I can talk about another time, because it is something that only 1% of the population in America at least does. And all the while I'm having a personal spiritual experience and growth happening exponentially inside of me. I decided at that time that I no longer could go into a Western medical center, and which I felt like I was strapping a woman down to give birth, and by applying the electronic fetal monitors and the interventions, I was seeing too many tragedies that I just knew some of them could have been avoided, but not all of them. Of course, has to be a neutral territory when you go into the hospital, but some of them were brought on by so many interventions, and I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. So I left this acclaimed hospital, which was super scary because it was a very good job, and I became a family nurse practitioner. And all the while I got pregnant again, and I had another home birth, and it was a beautiful experience, which is a whole nother story. But becoming a family nurse practitioner, I got to study with a lot of amazing doctors in the clinics. And I got to experience, I focused on the antenatal period, or, working with women in gynecology, OBGYN. And I really, really enjoyed it. So I got to see what it's like before you go into the hospital. So at this point in my life, I've seen the medical side of birth. I've seen the natural side of birth. I've studied with midwives, personally had both experiences. And then I went into the clinical side of it to see all sides of what it is in this day and age, what the whole process is of what we've created as birth. And I saw something missing in the clinics. 15-minute visit does not get to the emotional or the spiritual side of creating a child. And I realized over time and through my studies that I believe that there's a huge theory missing in this world, which is we create the children on this planet during the time of pregnancy. And all of this is missing. So how do you create a conscious child? Who knows what that means? So I went into studying this, and I became a Kundalini yoga teacher. I went in deep into meditation practices. I studied Ayurvedic medicine. I studied healing modalities of all sorts. And I was asked by a higher source, which is a magnificent story. I walked to the top of this mountain and was asked to write this book that is called Mystical Motherhood, that I believe will help many, 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 many women on this planet bring conscious children down. And the book guides you step by step on how to do that, because what does that mean? It's never really been defined. So I've combined Western and Eastern philosophies and my background in meditation and experience with Ayurveda and my experience with mind-body physical connection, the mind-body-spirit connection, into one book that will help to raise your frequency so that you can become a higher container to actually birth a higher child onto this planet. When I was asked to write this book and guided to write it, which was a very beautiful process, and I really, truly enjoyed it over the last year, I was guided to use the Maslow's hierarchy. as the backbone to bring women into higher awareness of how to do this. Because like, how do you set it up? Like, how do you raise your frequency? And Maslow's hierarchy takes women from the most basic needs to the more higher needs. And I broke that up in my book by preconception, so the time before you get pregnant. How can you, become a higher container through what you eat, the way you sleep, the words you say? How can you let go of past belief systems that from your genetic line? And I took, it's a very, step-by-step process. And how do you clean up the heavy metal toxins so that you have a very, very clean vessel? And then I went into the art of conscious conception, which I really don't think has been published from at least the lineage that I used, lineage of Kundalini, to do this. How to amplify yourself at conception, and what to do right after conception. And then I take you step by step through the process of pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and into the first 3 years of raising a child, because this is the period of time that affects the destiny and the characteristics of the child you're creating. And I used all my perspectives to create what I find to be an easy to read and easy to navigate process, which I will be teaching here every single week, maybe even more, of how to do this, of how to raise your frequency and how to birth new consciousness into this world just in a very small amount of time, and how to integrate meditation and wellness into your life step by step, and how to just change yourself just enough so that you can create something so beautiful in these short years. And so this is for mothers. This is for grandmothers. This is for my children. This is for all of your children. And I just hope that we as women can learn to birth in a new way and approach pregnancy from an entirely different perspective so that we're able to change this planet.